My name is Anthony Kerr, and I will be hosting the How to Build Inclusive Technology for a Diverse World session. I am the go-to-market lead for Skills for Employability in Worldwide Learning's organization. For those who are visually impaired, I am a Black male with a shirt that says "We see you" in a fairly empty room with some books and an exercise bike behind me. Now I'm going to ask my guests to give us a short intro. Chewy, let's start with you.
Hey, my name is Chewy Chong. I'm the Principal Product Manager on a co-innovation team here in Microsoft. I identify as Asian. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm standing in Microsoft offices, which is currently sunny in Redmond. I'm in the nondescript kind of engineering open office space, white walls, and I got post-it notes over my right shoulder.
MJ.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is MJ De Palma. My pronouns are she, her, they, and them. I am the head of inclusive marketing at Microsoft Advertising. I am standing in my office in Bellevue, Washington, with a bookshelf behind me with an ampersand sculpture right off my shoulder. I have glasses on. I'm a white woman with short blonde hair styled in a pompadour, and I am so excited to be here.
All right, all right. Chewy, could you give us a short background and tell us how you ended up here in this inclusive technology session?
You bet. I am from Singapore, but I grew up in a little town called Stone Mountain, Georgia, real close to Atlanta. I graduated electrical engineering degree, and I have spent the bulk of my career going around helping people with technology implementations. I worked in Australia, in Southeast Asia, and I'm now here in Seattle. I've worked for Microsoft for the past 15 years on and off, and I've done everything from developer evangelism. I ran the Bing business in Southeast Asia for a few years. I've done technical product management. And today I do product management for the Microsoft 365 kind of co-innovation team. And a lot of what I do is just making sure the products we make is, well, useful for as many people as possible. Most of my teams are gold on things like unique users and revenue. So the more people that could use our products, the better our products are.
Absolutely. Now, MJ, I know you are the head of inclusive marketing here at Microsoft. Can you tell the audience what that is and how does that relate to developers and build?
Absolutely. So I first want to level set a little bit on what is marketing. I am the head of inclusive marketing here at Microsoft Advertising, but often marketing is misunderstood as just promotions or only just advertising. But if you really look at the definition of marketing, it's the 6 Ps. So product, price, placement, promotion, the process of which you go about doing your business, but also I would also add purpose. But the key here is for developers and for those who are builders, it's also about product. And so my role here at Microsoft Advertising for the last couple years has been to focus on uncovering strategies based on our first-party research on how inclusion plays a role for customers, if at all, any type of role in the brand experience, in the customer experience with products, and enabling those strategies, tactics, and insights for our customers who are advertisers on our platform. What I've come to believe is that this strategy can be used by anyone, no matter what role you're in. And if we partner with engineering early on, and like Chewy said, be able to understand that customer experience and serve more people, the better off we are.
Absolutely. So speaking of purpose, getting into like, why are we here in the tech industry? And why is it so important that we build products that truly resonate with everyone and work for as many people as possible? What does that actually mean to build inclusively? Joey, we'll start with you.
Well, I joined the tech industry because I wanted to make a big impact. And the tools available to me is just doing geeky things and building things. That's my passion. And with that kind of context, and I'm sure many of you currently at Build has the same type of mindset of wanting to do big things. I'm going to share something open and honestly with everybody here. I did a lot of experimentation work kind of throughout my career. And with any experiment, there's always going to be winners and there's going to be losers. What was interesting about kind of my work when I was doing a lot of development work has been, well, sometimes the losers might be the same group of people. And I am involved a lot in the inclusion space because I'm worried some of the experiments that I'm doing is actually causing harm to people. So with some of the learnings that I've kind of built over the years and a realization that, hey, some of these experiments I'm doing might be hurting like women, people of color, people who might not be as tech confident as rest of we are. Well, how do I go through and better connect to them, better understand who they are so I can better build products that can include them, which by the way, inclusion is a good thing because it means more people get to use my product, which again translates to more UUs, more PVs, and ultimately more revenue for our business.
Absolutely. Doing no harm is an intentional act. You cannot go about that passively. MJ, what about you? What does it mean to be an inclusive builder or build inclusively?
Yeah, so for me, when I think about why am I part of the tech industry and what does it mean to build inclusively, it really comes down to my innate, I would say, burning desire to create scaled impact and to create our, meaning the entire planet's best collective future. I've always had this desire to help people. And unlike Chewy, I don't have a degree in engineering, but I have a degree in psychology because I just absolutely love trying to understand people and help one another or learn to understand one another. And so I think it's in the tech industry, we have an extremely huge opportunity and a privilege to shape the world so that no one is left behind and everyone has access to create their own best life. I think technology really is at the center of innovation, and when great, I would say, when great privilege is given, great responsibility should be taken. And so I'm really here to help create, a way for all of us to build our best collective future, to uncover these ways that we might be accidentally excluding people. And so I love partnering with others, unlike myself, with different types of brains, left brain, right brain. And together, I think that we can uncover the way that we might be accidentally excluding. And that is just taken from inclusive design principles. And so building inclusive is really about empathy, getting deliberately curious about others unlike ourselves so that we can innovate and find those aha moments that create those features that we didn't think of before. And in doing so, we create the connection, brand love and loyalty, because we create that experience of you get me, you are a brand for someone like me. And so building inclusively is really about rooting out our biases and the accidental exclusions.
Hey, I want to extend on what MJ just said there. Her little statement there about with great impact comes great responsibility. I mean, I completely agree with that. We might think I'm building some little innocuous feature in some product, but the reality is these decisions we make in how we build something significantly impacts people's ability to engage with tech. So if you didn't mean to make a crappy feature, or you didn't mean to make a feature that actually kind of prevents people from participating, there are significant knock-on kind of impact because of that, in the sense that the human experience as it exists in modern times today is heavily dependent on your ability to master technology. So these things that we do is very important. These choices we make is very important, making sure people can participate. And if you don't choose to be inclusive, right, just choosing not to be exclusive doesn't do it. You have to be conscious about being inclusive.
Absolutely. So speaking of actually doing that, building inclusive technology, how does one go about it? How does one create an inclusive product or an inclusive technical product? Joey, we'll start with you. How do we get there?
People like MJ is your secret weapon, Mr. or Mrs. Technologist, right? They are the people that's connected to our customers. So when you're building something and we know we've got that pressure about that sprint coming, I've got to make these deadlines, I have these OKRs or these metrics I have to drive. Just take a deep breath, step back, find your MJ of the world, right?
And what Chewy means by that is find your marketer, your partner that is really close in doing the consumer research. It's not just me.
Yeah, call MJ directly right now, right? But you're right, find your marketing partner. they talk to customers all the time. Read them in on what you're thinking about doing, what your vision is for your team, what you're working on, and at least they can start getting you input and feedback. And just having that coffee every couple of weeks or so goes a long way in getting you that additional perspective that you might not have. But from a specific kind of product perspective, my personal belief is you have to be conscious about inclusion. We've been working on something called customer diversity and inclusion, which is a very simple concept, which is I am going to measure the type of people using my product. So how many Blacks, how many Hispanics, how many Asians, how many whites, or other social economic kind of dimensions like high income, low income, rural, urban. If we go through and look at kind of what our customer base is, the people who actually benefits from your product, and you look at the countries and the regions you operate in, and you see there's a gap between like maybe people of color, right, versus the people of color using your product, then you've got something you can focus on, a metric you can work towards in partnership with your MJ, which is your marketing people, to figure out, is it a marketing issue, is it an onboarding issue, is it a product issue, is it a business issue? And then when you have that metric, you can work towards ensuring your product look just as diverse as the people that you serve.
Absolutely. So MJ, once the developer or the builder in the organization has found their MJ, what needs to happen?
Well, to expand on what Chuy is talking about here, I think it's critical for us as stewards of the customer experience to be really thoughtful about how we survey our customers. It's really simple and elemental, but I think it is often overlooked on how we design our research. So an inclusive research design, meaning, are we always pooling the same high value customers? Are we always looking at the same cohort, or just influencers? I think we fall into this trap of surveying the same types of customers over and over again. We don't look at dimensions of diversity, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic ability, languages, age. And when we start to slice the data with these types of dimensions of diversity in mind, all of a sudden what we thought was no big deal, or this is the answer, all of a sudden the answer for men becomes very different for women, or very different for gay women, or very different for people who have a disability that is a motor skill, right? And so I think it's really important for us as builders and as creators and those that are going to pave the way for access to future and prosperity, we have to include as many dimensions of diversity when we are surveying our customers and getting feedback on our features and our products. So I think that is really a key point, because as you know, it's an old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? We don't want to be building in an echo chamber.
100%.
To extend on kind of what MJ is saying there too, I'm an Asian man in tech, and there's a lot of Asian men in tech, just like a lot of white men in tech. And for the longest time, I operated under the belief that if I pretend everybody is genderless, everybody is raceless, I don't talk about race, I don't talk about gender, well, there's no way I can do something that's going to cause harm. And oh my God, was I wrong? really wrong on that one. My learning and my awakening over the past many years has been you actually have to talk about these things. And no matter how awkward it feels, like, for example, at the beginning of our session today, I expressed kind of who I am. I described myself to people who may have accessibility issues, right? And that was so awkward for me to describe myself as an Asian man, and I'm standing in this office, and kudos to MJ to kind of challenge us to think like this, right? But when you sit there and you talk about these things, no matter how awkward you feel, no matter how wrong it feels, if the intent is truly to understand, to learn, to broaden your horizon, having these conversations are good. And you got to find yourself partners around you. And again, I pick on MJ, but again, find your marketing partner, find your user research partner, talk to customers, have these open conversations. And when you're willing to have conversations about these weird issues that you normally don't talk about, you end up with something a lot more useful.
100%.
100%. So let's say you build a feature, you build a product, you did not do the inclusion on purpose, and all of a sudden you have an accidental exclusion. What challenges are created when that technology is not inclusive? MJ, I want to start with you.
I mean, the very first thing that comes to mind is you just miss out on serving customers, and people miss out on experiencing your solution to whatever it is you're creating in the world. So it's just a really big miss, bottom line. And really, worst case scenario is that people lose trust in your company. People lose trust in your product or what you're known for. Like, how come this doesn't speak to me? How come you didn't think about me? And once you lose trust, it's really hard to recover. There's a saying that trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. And so I think that we also have to consider that inclusively designing or inclusively building isn't just about demographics. It's also about values too. In our research, that is based on marketing with purpose is what it's called. And you can do a little search on that. There are trust drivers. How can you be responsible? Responsible building, responsible marketing, responsible customer experiences like privacy, transparency, accessibility, all of those things. If you're not paying attention to that, you're leaving out what people are really expecting from companies. 88% of people expect brands to step up and solve societal problems and help them with their daily footprint in their environmental efforts and in society challenges. And so they see this exchange of their dollar for your product as a way of participating in the world. And so I think it's really important to think about how we can be more responsible stewards of the customer experience, because really trust can be lost.
Absolutely. And really that's a double whammy. Brands want to see, or consumers want to see brands do something, but also you lose an audience that you're excluding. So you lose the audience that's looking for you to be inclusive, and you lose the audience that's excluding. That's a detriment to your business.
Absolutely.
Now, Chewy, I'm going to transition to the slides. You have a blue screen here and a white screen. Can you tell me what's happening?
Yeah, sure thing. This was one of the products I was responsible for on my last team here at Microsoft. This is what we call the UBI, the out-of-box experience. This is what you see when you buy that brand new device from like a Best Buy and you crack it open and you're like starting to set it up. The UBI is very important because it helps you find all the interesting features and windows that might be useful for you. We have data to show how you exit UBI is pretty much going to how you use your computer for the next 4 or 5 years of lifespan of your device. So the current UBI experience is the one on the left, the blue on black background. We had a brand new PM join the team. She was fresh from college, and she was responsible kind of looking at this experience and kind of giving input, making it better. And she said, hey, I think we should make it a lot more welcoming, a lot more inviting, because I feel the blue and black's very cold, right? If you bought this brand new device, you should feel happy. You should feel like excited. I feel that the experience that's more welcoming and more inviting would be the one on the right. And she created these comps, which is what you see right there, the white on kind of gray background. Now, what was fascinating was when she presented this, a number of men on the team responded kind of weirdly. Their feedback was, well, why on earth do you want us to allocate valuable engineering resource to make the blue into this white experience? We consider you trying to make it pretty when we actually have stability issues. We got GDPR coming down. Like, why do I want to invest on that versus these more important pressing engineering problems? Right then and there, we can tell there was an interesting disconnect between her and some of the male engineers on the team. So I pulled her aside and said, hey, why don't we go through and run a test? So we put a bunch of customers through the blue experience, and we'll put a bunch of customers through the white experience. And take a guess, which one of these two experiences perform better in ensuring users kind of get all the features and kind of capabilities of Windows and the device activated. So I'll pause there in the comments, just gonna type in what you think is gonna be better, the blue or white experience. Well, kind of has to be the white experience, right? I mean, that'd be a crappy story if it wasn't the white experience. Well, here's what's fascinating. There's no difference between the blue and white. So when we ran the experiment, the data came back, no stat sig, no difference between white and blue, they're the same. But since during these internal conversations, we saw such a difference between how men reacted and how women reacted, I did something unusual. I actually sought out to get input from the customers, gender, sexual orientation, education background, where they're located kind of during this test. And we found when we cut by gender, there was a significant difference between men and women in the sense that on the white experience, women performed 40% better, but men performed like 30% worse in the white experience. That was my personal awakening. I remember standing there like, you gotta be kidding me. First of all, the experiment said there was no difference. So if I didn't actually go deeper, I would have realized I was causing harm. In this case, I was causing harm to women. It's things like this that you would think innocuous. No difference between blue and white. Why would it matter? Ends up having material impact for 4 years for a woman who might be buying one of our devices, who's going to miss out on all these features that we spent so much time building to enable for them. And it would impact their overall Windows experience for quite a while to come.
Absolutely. So if a builder figured out a way to predictably serve the blue experience to someone who might be male, and serve the white experience to someone who might be female, you would expect what would happen, Joy?
Well, okay, this one was a hard one. We try to figure out, okay, how do we then figure out who to give the white and blue experience? Like the team is currently toying with the idea of letting people choose. They can express it. Maybe we randomly split between blue and white and let people change the colors that they want. But things like dark mode that was very popular 3 years ago, when we found out this problem, when we evaluated kind of like who's driving this gigantic push for dark mode features, you start realizing it was the men who were heavy users of the product, who knew how to go through and submit feature requests, who knew how to go through and vote. That's the reason why dark mode became so popular, because the men are building it, the men are the ones requesting it, and the men knew how to navigate user voice to vote for features up, right? So we got to take that into account. We got to find a way where we can allow people to choose what works best for them.
Absolutely. So on this next slide, there's some data, there's some users. Can you tell us what's happening here?
Okay, it's a big of a bunch of stuff thrown at you, but just look at the center graph, the data and product decisions. We, as engineers, as geeks, we love data. We love data because it helps guide us as to what we build. But what we don't realize is the data is biased. Shh, right? The data is lying to you. Because if you just look at the data, you start realizing that typically, and again, when I say typically, I mean every product I've ever looked at, you folks should look at your own data. But we've got this thing called the 80-20 rule, where 80% of whatever metric I'm actually going after is usually generated by 20% of the user base. Now, I've seen 30, 70, 10, 90, but it's usually disproportionate. It's never 100 to 100, okay? And if I'm saying how many people buy my product as the outcome I'm optimizing for, if I'm not careful, there's always this elite group of people doing that. This is to Andrew's point about us following the echo chamber. This is over-optimizing for a specific scenario. And this is very dangerous because not only are you leaving out the people in the yellow below, you're definitely leaving out the people in gray who are not even your users today, right? So there's a huge growth limit that you have here, right? But more importantly, you may end up making your product hostile towards the people in yellow and the people in gray because you've over-optimized it for the people in green, which again, I've looked at the data. I'm sharing with you my experience. In my world, the green happens to be Asian and white men. So that this is something to think about.
Absolutely. So
yeah, I was just going to add to that. Just amazing. I mean, this is such the crux of the issue here with building inclusively. I think that we can all agree that it's exciting to have the possibility that we may have so many more customers that we haven't reached yet. That's exciting. And now it's just an opportunity for us to start to be good stewards of the data, right? We all love data. We're in tech, and lots of decisions are based on data. And this is just there's so many stories going on in my head about clients of ours that discovered, like for example, one of our clients, he asked me, he said, "Who do you think buys luxury handbags?" And everyone in the room, myself included, we all assumed it was women, but it was actually men, because men were buying them for their significant others. And so like we have blind spots and we have things that, we assume just we've always done things the way that we've done them. And I think it's time for us to challenge ourselves, to shake up how we've done business, and start to build more equitable experiences. And I think we can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
don't trust your process. I mean, I'm going to be, I don't mean to kind of shake the boat too much here, but just because you do an experiment and something won, gotta go ask your data scientist, hey, do you have demographic splits? Do you have gender splits? The socioeconomic splits? I know if it wasn't for that experiment we did with blue and white, I know Microsoft experimentation's platform would not have kind of called out gender splits today. So today, whenever we run experiments, if we see a significant difference between men and women's performance, we now will highlight that issue. If it wasn't for this particular experiment, would we not have known this could be a problem? Because again, at least in tech, it's always been awkward. You just don't talk about this stuff because the best way to not get in trouble is to not talk about it. But no, you got to talk about it. You got to ask these questions. Do not trust the data because this is really what's behind the data when you shine a light on it.
Absolutely. So MJ, in marketing, we love personas. So we love creating these persona stories, these user stories. So what happens when these personas that we create are not completely inclusive? Let's say we may miss, let's say, an audience that is differently abled. What can we do? What happens?
I think persona is a way to be, compartmentalize the way that we approach our business. And, the human experience is really complex and diverse. How we view a person, if we view them just as a persona, we sometimes don't necessarily go deep enough to understand the diversity behind that persona. And so I think that we really run the risk of not resonating and coming off tone deaf, frankly. And so there's this opportunity to have more cultural context and to get clear, because what people demand of brands is getting bolder. As I alluded to earlier, one of the key insights we had early on in studying inclusive marketing was people will buy from brands that stand for something larger than just their product or service. There's many layers to achieving inclusion in design. Not only is the feature an option of actually achieving inclusive builds, but also how does it solve challenges that people have in saying feeling safe or feeling confident or giving them clarity in a situation that is confusing. In our research, we identified actual feelings that signal inclusion. And just recently, I read a neuroscientist found out that human beings cannot make decisions without accessing their feelings. And so when you think about making a decision to buy a product or to support a brand or to continue buying a product, that is a decision. And the decision isn't just based on logic, it's based on human emotion. I have a degree in psychology. I love understanding people, and I now realize why. It is how we move the world forward with decision making, and it's how we access our feelings and connect with one another. So I think that we have to get really clear on how we design not just a persona, but really the diverse human experience should be considered. And there's so many insights that we've uncovered in our research that helps, I would say, anyone, whether it's an engineer or a data scientist or a marketer, build more inclusive customer experiences that our research shows drives trust, love, and brand loyalty.
All the best things when you're a brand. So MJ, previously you had an example about something Tommy Hilfiger did with the buttons. Can you give us an example or use
Absolutely.
that example to illustrate inclusivity for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, it's really interesting to take a look at how other companies have innovated. And sometimes it's really difficult to step into a space that nobody has before. You're the tip of the arrow. Often there's no data there. And what Tommy Hilfiger did is they decided, because their brand, I would say, values and mission is to make it possible. That is what they are about. And so looking at people with disabilities, they realize that everyone should be able to dress themselves in an equitable way. And so they got together and looked at how people with disabilities, from I would say a physical disability standpoint, how do they have challenges dressing themselves? And they designed magnetic buttons, zippers you can use with one hand, padded jeans for sitting long periods of time if somebody is using a wheelchair. And remember now, they didn't have like a big, I would say, data set that said, this has created revenue for this company, we should get on board as well. They were the first to actually step into this space to create fashion for people with disabilities. And what happened is people who bought that product and another regular product, not an adaptive product, 80% of them were new customers. And that is an incredible, huge number, 80%. And so I think it really highlights how this can be an innovative approach to building new products. Just think about engineering the whole manufacturing line, right? Just this is an incredible example, and I would say it takes courage, but I think the reward is great. There's over 1 billion people in the world with a disability, 2.3 billion if you count friends and family, and so just consider that 70% of disabilities are not even visible. And so when we think about inclusively designing products, if we just started with one dimension or two, highly suggest we look at accessibility and perhaps take a look at gender as a slice of the data just to get started. And so that's just one example. There are so many examples of inclusive design and product, but the heart of it is deliberate curiosity about others and having that insight of how we might be excluding, and that's where the innovation happens.
Hey, to extend on kind of what MJ is saying too, from a different perspective, which is that of staffing. Like I have to go through and like staff on my team. Being able to say that I'm doing something with a purpose. You're not just going to show up and take a salary and just, make us more money. Like that doesn't really work. I get really good talent when I actually say, hey, look, I'm here to do X, Y, and Z. I want to make a difference. I want to be more inclusive. And here's the things I've done in my team and my product and my organization to do that. That has gone a long way in us being able to access really, really good talent. And if you're watching this video, you're probably one of those good talents too. Vote with your feet. If you're going to go and apply to a job somewhere, ask these tough questions. I know when I was interviewing, I asked some really tough questions. I made some really big companies really nervous when I say, hey, look, what is your inclusion work? How do you folks think about diversity? What do you think about sustainability? And when they don't have a really good answer to that, oh man, they got to pay me a lot of money. But usually I say, yeah, no, I don't know work for them.
So speaking of tough questions, Shui, I'm going to ask you a tough question from the audience. From Michael E., how do we advocate for inclusivity when we don't have the funding to take on, say, mobile app visual accessibility projects?
Oh, okay. That is a hard trade-off because you've got immediate pressing needs to go do something. Like I won't even invest necessarily in accessibility. This becomes a problem. But what is interesting is if you actually take a step back and think about where your product's going to be in like 5 years, 10 years. Like according to the US Census, in the next 15, 20 years, like Latinx is going to be 1/4 of the American population, right? So if you are not thinking about the long term, there's going to be knock-on effects to your product in 5, 10 years. So I know we might be all focused on the today issues. Having that conversation, having your peers, having that open conversation, especially now when everyone's more receptive to it, to say, hey, look, what do we think about diversity of our customer base? Are we equitable? Are we serving them all equally? Just starting that conversation and having people take a time out and just think will go a long way in getting the behavior that we hope we will see from our kind of leaders and our peers.
I want to add to that if I can. One of the things that I'm not sure where that question in the world is coming from, if it's coming from the United States or another country, but take a look, do a search on the Supreme Court decision for Domino's and a gentleman who had no vision. They were sued because of their website and app were not accessible by this gentleman. He could not order pizza because it wasn't accessible. And there's the American Disabilities Act. So if you don't have the budget to make something accessible, I really would take a hard look at that responsibility angle. What are the laws? We here at Microsoft want to not only be compliant, but go above and beyond. And yes, budget is sometimes a really hard thing, but I also suggest taking a look at the laws in your area, because I think it's a business requirement for any type of service that is public facing. The American Disabilities Act here in the United States. And we have ways to help you. Accessibilityinsights.io is a free technology that Microsoft has created. If you go and take a look at that website, it actually evaluates your website and tells you what's wrong with it from an accessibility standpoint and how to fix it. So there's a lot of tech that Microsoft has created that you can use and get started. So
I love that process. So MJ, sticking with you here, like what are the things that someone could go learn today, or the skills that they can go build so they don't have to kind of sit in a room and think about like, oh, how do I make this inclusive?
So first of all, we have some courses on Learn. There's inclusive marketing in the cloud. There's a course on that. I would highly suggest just start there. Again, marketing is not just promotions, it's about product design. And it's about thinking out of the box and uncovering the ways that you might be excluding people. And that is really taken from the inclusive design principles at Microsoft. If you go to our site as well, there's a whole section on inclusive design. There's other types of technology like Microsoft Fluent that websites can be built on. And once you get done really digging into all of the courses on Learn, you can also check out the course that I created called Marketing with Purpose. It's at microsoftadvertising.com/learnwithpurpose. And it gives you those ideas of how to build responsibly, all those accessibility things that I talked about, and how values drive value, and then how to do inclusion in not only in your marketing, but just your end-to-end customer experience, because it's not only what you market or who you market to, but how you do business end-to-end. And so I invite you to join us on this journey of learning and be a bunch of learn-it-alls, not a bunch of know-it-alls, because this is about learning and growing.
100%. So Microsoft Learn, we have accessibility training on there. We have inclusive design training. Microsoft Advertising has Marketing with Purpose. There are a lot of resources out here to help you get started. You don't have to do this by yourself. We can help you get there. So Chewy, we have Michael in the audience asking for more examples of unintentional exclusivity. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have more examples of when technology on accident or just doesn't design for bringing everyone in?
Hey, Michael, call me up, buddy. I will talk you to sleep on the number of examples, right? One example that really resonates with me actually came from one of the nonprofit partners we work with. We were talking to them about like, how do we go through, they're sharing a story about how they were focused on getting Latinx families to do more prenatal care. And they built a mobile app experience that just asks people to kind of register with their email addresses so they can send notifications, hey, time to come see the doctor, or make sure you take your I know very little about maternity, but take your prenatal vitamins, things like that. What was interesting was when they released the experience, and I'll pause there, it didn't work very well. There was no one using the app experience. So take a guess why that happened. Give me a second, my lights turned off here. Well, I'll turn the lights on in a second. But the reason why that particular app experience didn't perform very well was because they asked for email addresses. And that was a big miss because they didn't understand the Latinx population actually used their mobile phone more. So when they changed the login and the kind of identity to mobile phone numbers, then boom, usage went from like 5% to like 80% overnight. So simple things like that we just think everybody has an email address, it's actually not true all the time. So knowing your audience, talking to your MJ and marketing partner to kind of get that sanity check before you actually release that product goes a long way, making sure you actually get the audience right from the get-go.
100%. Joey, that lighting was very dramatic. It was actually a cool effect. I don't know if you did that.
I think the sensor doesn't see me.
Well, there's also a really great documentary that came out called Coded Bias. So take a look at that, but it talks about the facial recognition machine learning data that was fed into the system, and facial recognition software couldn't recognize anybody who had dark colored skin because the data that was fed into the algorithm was based on lighter skin individuals. So that's just another example.
MJ, real quick, we have someone in the audience asking you to repeat the web address for Microsoft Advertising.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. It is microsoftadvertising.com/learn-with-purpose. And that is where the course is found.
Absolutely. So, Chewy, we have Demir in the audience asking to comment on the principle of solve for one, extend to many. How do we switch this up to be more inclusive for us?
Oh gosh, it's something we believe. All right. I feel the biggest way to kind of think this thing through is, as a PM, the first thing we do is about who's our audience and then narrow that down and focus on that. But let's just be open and direct and transparent about it. If my audience is my existing customers, and your existing customers are, again, Asian or white men, then you should just openly say, I'm building products for Asian and white men, and be proud of it because that's exactly what you're doing, right? Now, when you say it like that, then is it really kind of that principle building for one and extend to many, right? Like I get these principles, it's all about helping PM and product people focus because we can't boil the ocean. I know the practicalities of it. You have a new product, you got it out of the door, you're gonna start somewhere, but be mindful of it, right? Call it out, and then when you're ready and you're embarrassed by that statement, I'm only building for Asian white men, then let's try to make it better.
I'm gonna add a quick little piece to this, is that anybody use text, SMS? Everybody does. It was designed for people with disabilities. Designed for one, extend to many. So when you look at inclusive design principles, they have some really cool scenarios. When you design for the edge of ability or an edge use case, there's sometimes, these other types of situations that people are all of a sudden, I want to use that. Captioning is another example. A lot of us who can still hear, we use captioning, we read, it might be English as is our second language, or we're in France and we don't know French and we put captioning on and we turn on translator. So that's a really simple example, but that's build for one, extend to many.
Absolutely. So 40 seconds, MJ, what are your closing thoughts to the audience on inclusive technology?
Let's try to be together stellar stewards of the customer experience. And that means having deliberate curiosity about others unlike ourselves so we can gain that empathy to uncover the insight of how we might be accidentally excluding people so that we can design for our best collective future.
Joey, how about yourself?
It's all about customer diversity and inclusion, right? Be conscious of who your customers are. Go try to find out who they are if you don't actually have that information. And just start tracking. If this is my customer base today, does it look like the population whom I'm trying to serve? And if it isn't, find the gaps and just start having a conversation with those people. And once you see the gap and you hear from the gap, then you can do something about that gap.
All right. So audience, I'm going to leave you with this slide. This slide just has one link at the bottom that's telling you where to go to begin learning. So this talk wasn't about hearing us speak. It was about giving you the tools necessary to go do inclusion on the products and features you're building. So check out Microsoft Learn and enjoy the rest of your build. We'll see you next time.